the Daily Signal, and we're here at CPAC 2016 for Daily Signal Fight Club. I'm joined today by Bethany Mandel and Amelia Hamilton, and we're here to discuss if free speech is alive on college campuses. So Bethany, I'll give you the first word.
All right, so I have the hard position in that it sort of is alive on college campuses if you think about it in an optimistic light, which is not usually my point of view, but I'm really going to try to challenge myself. So I went to Rutgers University, and there is no free speech on that campus, let me just say that. And I think it actually made me, I know that it made me conservative, and I think it made me a much better conservative. I was able to hone my arguments in a way that I never would have been able to had I gone to Hillsdale, which is where I want my kids to go, scholarship, build a Hillel. So there is not freedom of speech on that campus, but I think that there is value to all of this insanity that's going on. But there is free speech on other campuses, and I think one of the amazing things about America is that we have a lot of money to sort of, if we as conservatives say, we're not going to go to Rutgers, we're not going to go to Missouri, we're going to bring our business and our tens and tens of thousands of dollars per child to places where they have the freedom to think differently, and everyone doesn't have to have a monolithic opinion. Everybody doesn't have to go to Hillsdale and Liberty, which are amazing universities, but if people want to have the comfort of being different and being allowed to be different on campus, that we should utilize our power as conservative parents and say, and ask college administrators, say, you know, my child holds conservative points of view. What will you do to ensure my child's safety? I mean, really, it's a safety issue on campus, and I think that we have power to do that. So I don't know if I would ever send my kids to Rutgers given everything that happened, but it made me feisty, and it made me really, really hone my arguments. So if that's sort of like the upside to all of this insanity, like one sort of side personal anecdote. So I was picking up my husband's car. He got it towed a couple weeks ago, which Amelia knows all about. Change the plates on your car when you buy a new car, or it gets towed. And I met this father who was working at the tow truck company, and he was sending his daughter to the University of Missouri, and he was really not happy, but she was a journalism major. And he said, you know, I never thought that she would have this experience in the middle of the country, in the middle of Missouri, but she's having this incredible experience where she's seeing all of these things happen live, and she's able to have such life experience, which a lot of college students don't have. So whenever she goes to an employer later on and says, I was at University of Missouri when it was really hitting the fan, and I can handle stress, and I can handle anything that your viewers and your market might throw at me because I went through the worst. And I think that that's something that a lot of college students can't really say when they go on job interviews, that they had experience. And as a journalism major, to say I have experience in this crazy situation, I mean, if I were a parent of a kid who wanted to be a war reporter, which my children better never want that, I would say, look at University of Missouri, look at these places where there is no free speech on campus, and fight, and be like a Ben Shapiro. And there's another, Daniel Mayel, who was at Brandeis, and I knew him from Rising the Ranks at Brandeis because he was working with Ben Shapiro, and he really did incredible work opening up everyone's eyes to what was going on in Brandeis, and he was able to make a name for himself. And he was fielding a lot of offers when he left Brandeis because he had that sort of war experience of being a tough guy and filing stories from the trenches of liberal Brandeis in Massachusetts. So there's some positives to the insane wars on campuses, and those are just a couple of them.
Okay, so Amelia, tell us, is free speech alive on college campuses?
It is not. Bethany, you made a lot of great points, but most of them really reinforce that free speech is not alive and well, only that there's a silver lining to it. Free speech, there are safe spaces, conservative speakers are being canceled all the time. People are just out openly saying that they don't think that conservative viewpoints should even be heard. Like you mentioned Ben Shapiro, he did an event recently in California, And there were protesters saying, conservative viewpoints, students shouldn't be able to hear these. It's so, so horrific that another viewpoint might possibly be introduced. I think that one of the points that you made about about conservatives choosing different schools for their kids, I think that that's a lot of hope for the future. So I think that even though there's not free speech on campus right now, maybe there is in a life support kind of way. There are a few students fighting back, but in terms of, the organizations as a whole, free speech is not alive and well. But I think that it's definitely possible that in future generations, like by the time your kids are in college, or even, students today in high school, I think that they can make better choices seeing what's going on now, and hopefully they haven't already been brainwashed to the point where they're like, oh, thank goodness there's a safe space school for me to go to. But yeah.
So I want to ask one thing. We hear all this talk about microaggressions and safe spaces. Is this sort of contributing, this environment and this phenomenon, is this contributing to the so-called wussification of America?
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. As a mom, I see, we don't raise kids. I mean, you and I sort of had very similar childhoods. Emily and I Amelia. I did that to her earlier today too. I called her. Amelia and I sort of had very, very similar sort of free-range childhoods where our parents gave us a lot of leeway, and this is like seeing just the toddler sort of from the toddler on up. We can't handle a difference of opinion, and we feel like we need to be protected from it. And I mean, I think back to my time at Rutgers, like, I'm so glad that I went there, and I'm so glad that I was never protected, because I would have walked out just as liberal as I went in, and I went in pretty liberal. And I saw all of these safe spaces opening up, and I saw the way that they shut down debate, and it made me think, like, what are you so afraid of that you can't have a conversation? And it really sort of sparked my interest in conservatism.
Yeah, college definitely brought out my conservatism and patriotism too.
Do you see, when you read all of these stories and these events going on at Yale and Mizzou and Ithaca College, do you sort of see that trend of the wussification of America?
Oh, absolutely. Even among friends, people are just sort of shutting out people that, if you have one disagreement, people are blocking on Twitter or saying we can't be friends anymore, and retreating directly to a safe space. People are wanting safe spaces to exist, just having a conservative speaker booked. Let's have a safe space before they even arrive, so we can talk about our feelings before we even know what they're going to say. It's getting completely insane. And there's no way we can create a society that can dialogue, which I guess is what they want, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of looking forward to the pushback being when all of these people go into the workforce and there is no safe space at your office.
And there is competition.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I did want to ask, you said that you have seen this lack of free speech as a positive, in that it taught you how to debate and brought in your worldview. So what's next? How are those students going to be received when they get jobs and move to other cities?
They're going to be baristas at Starbucks, honestly. I mean, I sort of saw it when I graduated that I was actually a competent human being who could hold a debate, and I found it very easy to get my first jobs right out of college. And I graduated college in 2008. Really, when it became impossible to find jobs, I had one within a month and a half. Because I was able to have a conversation with my coworkers, and no one really knew how I felt politically and what I thought, because I was able to be neutral and be bland. And I would bond very quietly with my conservative coworkers, and it worked. But it's very good news for conservatives. Let me just say that, because when they're starting businesses and when they're looking for jobs, they're not going to need a safe space. And I sort of I think of it as the breeders are going to inherit the earth. The breeders are also going to be able to inhabit the earth and have jobs and be competent members of society. And these safe spacers, they're going to be baristas at Starbucks, and they're going to quit in a huff because someone thought that they were a woman when they were actually a cisgender, I don't even know, you know these terms better than I do. You post about them all the time, how funny they are.
But I'm not sure I agree with you on that, because I think that that's one reason that there is a growing like socialist movement, is I think because they're going, we can't find jobs, and it certainly can't be because my precious snowflake self did something wrong. So clearly the government needs to just provide for me. So I'm concerned that we're just taking this wussification fully into adulthood, into, okay, well now that I'm out of college, now the entire world is my not safe space. So the government better provide my next safe space for me, just cradle to grave, safe it up.
Sort of to play devil's advocate, how do you address the concerns of, our last question, the concerns of those who need a safe space and also those who want open debate? And if you could keep it relatively short.
I'm not the nicest person in the world. My husband says I'm not the most empathetic. That's how he couches it. Grow up. Honestly, this is the real world, and it's not fair, and it's not nice. And I grew up hearing that. My mom said from when I was 2 years old, life isn't fair. And if more parents said that to their kids, we would be in a far better situation. And if they're not going to say it to a 2-year-old, then we have to say it to a 20-year-old. Life isn't fair. Sorry.
So I think that if there is a genuine issue, if someone has suffered some kind of actual genuine trauma, I think that they should be aware that maybe, depending on the topic, be aware that something's going to happen and skip that event. I don't think that means the event doesn't need to be on campus, or even that you can't learn something from it.
Yeah.
But I don't think something like a safe space needs to happen. I think that all those do is encourage this behavior that says, alternative, or not alternative, but differing viewpoints are just wrong and they're not okay, and it's going to hurt my fancy feelings if anyone mentions them.
Well, Bethany and Amelia, thank you so much for joining us. Tell us what you think about free speech on college campuses on Twitter, and the handle is @DailySignal.